Finally, we come to perhaps the most common form of undead, that possessing both body and soul, though the body is unserviceable for the purpose of naturally supporting life and would consequently be inanimate were it not for the presence of magic or something similar. To this category we would, for example, ascribe the lowly ghoul. This is a creature most often described as having become what it is through a disease, acquired through having been bitten or scratched by another ghoul. So, in other words, very similar to the zombies of The Walking Dead. Ghouls apparently attack, bite and eat both the dead and the living. They inhabit cemeteries and other burial sites. Their skin appears pitted and decaying. They miss body parts. In the world of Fallout, which is obviously post-apocalypse rather than a fantasy scenario, one defining feature appears to have having no nose. This leads me to believe that perhaps ghouls have been inspired by severe cases of syphilis. That venereal disease was endemic to human civilization until very recently with the advent of penicillin. And so it would only seem natural that authors steeped in the Edwardian age of the early 20th century, like Lovecraft, in whose works ghouls are an important element, having seen cases of extreme syphilis with lost noses and pitted skin, and this having left a deep impression on them, would be likely to portray something similar in their writings. Anyway, ghouls are putrid, decaying corpses, driven by insatiable hunger for man-flesh, both dead and living, but with the spirit of the ghoul seemingly madly trapped in its hideous form and unable to counter this insatiable hunger through cogent thought. Mummies, in my opinion, can be either type 1, i.e. corporeal dead only, or type 3 hybrids, whether created by evil deities or powerful spellcasters, or just sometimes being the accidental outcome when Egyptian-style fantasy pharaohs and their nobility are embalmed and mummified for their journey to the afterlife. Mummies are a wonderful trope to play with. Are they all even evil? Maybe most of them are, hateful and envious of the living, enraged by the soul parts of their sevenfold being not having managed to make the final leap to the kingdom of the dead. But maybe a few are just perplexed and curious about why they're still abiding in the world of the living. Maybe they can't quite figure out whether they're actually dead. Their flesh is still intact after all, including skin, bone and hair. Their vital organs are all stored away in jars for the heart, liver, kidneys, intestines, etc. But who usually thinks about the fact that one has a functioning liver inside one's body when one is still alive? People are much too preoccupied with the outsides of their bodies and how they look to generally worry about what's on the inside. So maybe these poor creatures are just frightened out of their wits, with their nerves in tatters because they have been buried in a huge pyramid with thousands of tons of stone overhead and no way to get out, trapped alongside all these dead. Who, alive or dead, would not be driven mad under those circumstances? And then there are grave robbers and adventurers who come near and start waving swords and screaming in fright at the sight of you. It's not your fault that they can't see that you're just as frightened as they are. And when you try asking for help, they stab you in the gut or wherever your gut used to be. This actually brings up an important question about the undead. Are they all evil? I loathe the modern concept whereby you can't have all members of a fantasy race or group of beings being either only good or only evil, such as elves being good or all orcs being evil. Of course you can. It's fantasy. But if you want to make all undead in your fantasy world evil, that's fine. But if you don't, that's also all right. Certainly the practice of necromancy is always evil or at least suspect, and going against the natural order of things, as the good gods meant for them to function. Most powerful undead, like wraiths, wights and vampires, more about them in a minute, I think should always be evil, and so should zombies and skeletons, because of the way they were made. But even the souls that once inhabited these carcasses could have been either good or evil or the mix of it too. Perhaps good beings should have a greater resistance to being made into a zombie or skeleton, the way a dead elf should not, in my opinion, be able to be made into either. But are all ghosts evil? What binds them to this world and makes them unable to traverse into the next is not always hatred for the living. It can be anger, yes, but it's not necessarily anger directed at a good person, and quite often one at an injustice. A wrong that has to be righted in order for them to find peace and move on. The ghost of Hamlet's father is an excellent example of a good ghost, one that merely has to tell its story of how it was wronged and perhaps seek revenge for the crime and righteous retribution. Can mummies then perhaps be good but misunderstood, or are they foul creations of unwholesome magic, sort of embalmed zombies, or perhaps something else entirely? Many powerful undead belong to the type 3 category, type body and soul. The Nazgul, or Ring-wraiths of Tolkien's legendarium, seem to belong to this category. The rings have made them less and less corporeal and belonging to our world, and more insubstantial and belonging to the spirit world only, in which these artifacts have them firmly anchored, though the spirit world and physical are coterminous, so that the spirits of both dead and living exist in the same geographical location in both. When Frodo puts on the ring on Weathertop, he sees the ring-wraiths in the spirit world as they truly are, great kings and magicians of men. They are, however, still slightly corporeal. A mere fragment of their former bodies is still tied to this earth. Merry thrusts his short sword into the Witch King's knee joint on the Pelennor fields, his blade cleaving the undead flesh. So the Nazgul definitely belong to this third type undead. But they are gradually passing, slipping from being ring-wraiths to being incorporeal ghosts, phantoms, spirits, of fare only. Bilbo, Frodo and Gollum, even Sam, although he only wore the ring for a short time, have also begun this journey. Bilbo describes to Gandalf how he, quote, feels thin, sort of stretched like butter scraped over too much bread. This is the initiation of the process. Frodo also feels he's fading from this world. Gollum has gone further along this path. The Barrow-wights are also powerful undead, though not quite as powerful as the Ring-wraiths. They too are a combination of both soul and body. Their souls are described as the tormented spirits being released out of Angmar, and infesting the remains of the kings and queens, lords and ladies of the Dunedain kingdom of Cardolan, one of the successor states of the kingdom of Arnor, which was the northern realm in exile of the Dunedain. In other words, the Barrow-wights' souls come from Angmar, the realm of the Witch King, and are probably not all initially evil. Rather, they have been tortured and killed in the dungeons of the Witch King, and then expedited by magic to inhabit and animate the skeletal remains of the Cardolan nobles lying in dignified death in their burial barrows. It is clear that the particular wight which intends to kill the hobbits tries to do so through both mind control magic and the use of cold steel. Wights other than Barrow-wights, in other words, those not tied to a burial ground, would probably be equally made up of both body and soul. Liches are a favourite type of undead in many fantasy settings and role-playing games. These are spellcasters in D&D said to be wizards, sorcerers and the like, more often than evil priests, though the latter category also exists, who have transitioned to eternal undeath to escape their own mortality using powerful magic. Appearance-wise, to my knowledge, they are all skeletons, perhaps often with a bony crown infused to their heads, and garbed in the wizardly robes or armour, all decrepit from passing of centuries that they wore in life. Being spellcasters, it is only natural to find them armed with magical staves, wands and canes. as it takes a lot of magical acuity or mana, which is a term I find particularly good to use, the Force in Star Wars parlance, to be able to cast these spells and perform the rituals demanded for the transition from life to unlife. These evil spellweavers often have retinues of undead servants and soldiers, frequently lesser beings like skeletons and zombies. In order to become a lich, one has to create at least one phylactery, wherein to place one's heart, soul, and or essential essence. Voldemort has several such phylacteries. Unless you destroy all of the phylacteries of a lich, the creature cannot be permanently destroyed. Creating, finding, or identifying these phylacteries makes for excellent plot lines. One good thing is that they don't have to be the same kind, although the staple item seems to be a small box, at least in D&D.